Hey everyone, happy Monday. So I just wanted to check in with you guys. This starts are we on 3 weeks now? I've already lost track of time, how long we've been doing this. So I wanted to start off with I'll kind of throw some of these different things in here too. So a little like activity that I want you to try out. So I want you to take your hands, okay? Fold them like you're folding your hands, okay? Now take a look at your hands. Oh, it's hard for you to see. And see which thumb is on the top. Okay, so for me, it's my left thumb. Okay, so that means like my left hand is kind of on the top of my hands when they're folded. If you haven't done it yet, because you've been resisting, do it now. So fold your hands. Okay, so now I want you to like unfold your hands and then put your other thumb on top. So I'm gonna put my right thumb on top, okay? How does that feel? Kind of weird, kind of uncomfortable? For me, it feels very strange. My hands are kind of like out of whack, sort of. Okay, so now I want you to go back to the way you were before. How's that feel now? I just had like a sigh of relief, like, oh, that felt better. Felt a little bit better. Now I'm gonna try again. So I'm gonna go back to the right hand. Okay. Feel a little bit different? For me, like it wasn't as weird as the first time. So now I want you to like go back and forth a couple times. Right, left, right, left, right. That was more than a couple, I know. So how does it feel now when your secondary hand is on top? Do you still notice a difference? So hopefully it actually got a little bit more normal the more that you did it. So for me, that's like a example of what we're going through right now. So like at first, when we switched to this new online learning, not showing up at school, not seeing everyone every day, it was like really awkward, uncomfortable, kind of weird. But really, like the more you do it, just like switching the hands, the more like, okay, I'm kind of getting the hang of this, kind of getting a routine. And I hope that we can still keep making the best of what the rest of the semester holds. So just something to throw in today. I am a lover of classic literature. So I wanted to do today a short story, like a classic. So it's from a book. Oh man, look at this screen. It's called 50 Great Short Stories. So I want to read you guys today this short story called The Phoenix. Okay. So just sit back, take a listen, lay on your couch, whatever you want to do. Okay. This is by Sylvia Townsend Warner. Lord Strawberry, a nobleman, collected birds. He had the finest aviary in Europe, so large that eagles did not find it uncomfortable, so well laid out that both hummingbirds and snow bunting had a climate that suited them perfectly. But for many years, the finest set of apartments remained empty, with just a label saying Phoenix, Habitat Arabia. Many authorities on bird life had assured Lord Strawberry that the phoenix was a fabulous bird, or that the breed was long extinct. Lord Strawberry was unconvinced. His family had always believed in phoenixes. At intervals, he received from his agents, together with statements of their expenses, birds which they declared were the phoenix, but which turned out to be orioles, macaws, turkey buzzards dyed orange, etc., or stuffed crossbreeds ingeniously assembled from various plumages. Finally, Lord Strawberry went himself to Arabia, where, after some months, he found a phoenix, won its confidence, caught it, and brought it home in perfect condition. It was a remarkably fine phoenix, with a charming character, affable to the other birds in the aviary, and much attached to Lord Strawberry. On its arrival in England, it made a great stir among ornithologists, journalists, poets, and milliners, and was constantly visited. But it was not puffed by all this attention, And when it no longer was in the news and the visitors fell off, it showed no peak or rancor. It ate well and seemed perfectly contented. It cost a great deal of money to keep up an aviary. When Lord Strawberry died, he died penniless. The aviary came on the market. In normal times, the rarer birds, and certainly the phoenix, would have been bid for by the trustees of Europe's great zoological societies, or by private persons in the USA. But as it happened, Lord Strawberry died just after a world war when both money and birdseed were hard to come by. Indeed, the cost of birdseed was one of the things that had ruined Lord Strawberry. The London Times urged in a leader that the phoenix head be bought for the London Zoo, saying that a nation of bird lovers had a moral right to such a rarity, and a fund called the Strawberry Phoenix Fund was open. Students, naturalists, and zoo children contributed according to their means, but their means were small and there was no large donation. So Lord Strawberry's executors, who had the death duties to consider, executors of his will, closed with a high offer to Mr. Tancred Poldero, owner and proprietor of Poldero's Wizard Wonderworld. For quite a while, Mr. Poldero considered his phoenix a bargain. It was a civil, obliging bird and adapted itself readily to its new surroundings. It did not cost much to feed, and it did not mind children. Though it had no tricks, Mr. Poldero supposed it would soon pick up some. The publicity of the Strawberry Phoenix Fund was now most helpful. Almost every contributor now saved up another half-crown in order to see the phoenix. Others who had not contributed to the fund even paid double to look at it for 5 shillings. But then business slackened. The phoenix was as handsome as ever and as amiable, but Mr. Poldero said it hadn't got edge. Even at popular prices, the phoenix was not readily popular. It was too quiet, too classical. The people went instead to watch the antics of the baboons or to admire the crocodile who had eaten a woman. One day, Mr. Poldero said to his manager, Mr. Ramkin, "How long since any fool paid to look at that phoenix?" "A matter of 3 weeks," replied Mr. Ramkin. "Eating his head off," Mr. Poldero. I think it's eating a lot. Let alone an insurance. 7 shillings a week it cost me to insure that bird. I might as well have insured the Archbishop of Canterbury. The public don't like him. He's too quiet for them. That's the trouble. He won't mate or nothing. And I've tried him, but no end to pretty pollies, ospreys, and conchinchinas, and the Lord knows what else. But he won't look at them. I wonder if we could swap him for a livelier one, said Mr. Poldero. Impossible. There's only one of him at a time. Go on. I mean it. Haven't you read what it said on the label? They went to the phoenix's cage. It flapped its wings politely, but paid no attention. They read, Pansy, Phoenix, Phoenixissima, Orosissima, Erebania. This rare and fabulous bird is unique, the world's old bachelor. He has no mate and doesn't want one. When old, sets fire to itself and emerges miraculously reborn, specially imported from the East. I've got an idea, said Mr. Poldero. How old do you suppose this bird is? Looks in its prime to me, said Mr. Ramkin. Suppose, continued Mr. Poldero, we could somehow get him a light. We'd advertise it beforehand, of course, work up interest. Then we'd have a new bird, and a bird with some romance about it, a bird with a life story. We could sell a bird like that. Mr. Ramkin nodded. I've read about it in a book, he said. You've got to give them scented woods and whatnot, and they build a nest and sit down in it and catch fire spontaneous. But they won't do it till they're old. That's the snag. Leave it to me, said Mr. Poldero. You get those scented woods, I'll do the aging. It was not easy to age the phoenix. Its allowance of food was halved and halved again, and though it grew thinner, its eyes were undimmed and its plumage was as glossy as ever. The heating was turned off, but it puffed out its feathers against the cold and seemed none the worse. Other birds were put into its cage, birds of a peevish and quarrelsome nature. They pecked and chived at it, but the phoenix was so civil and amiable that after a day or two, they lost their animosity. Then Mr. Poldero tried alley cats. These could not be won by manners, but the phoenix darted above their heads, flapped its golden wings in their faces, and daunted them. Mr. Poldero turned to a book on Arabia and read that the climate was dry. Aha, he said. The phoenix was moved to a small cage that had a sprinkler in the ceiling. Every night the sprinkler was turned on. The phoenix began to call. Mr. Poldero had another good idea. Daily, he stationed himself in front of the cage to jeer at the bird and abuse it. When spring came, Mr. Poldero felt justified in beginning a publicity campaign about the aging phoenix. The old public favorite, he said, was nearing its end. Meanwhile, he trusted the bird's reflections every few days by putting a few tufts of foul-smelling straw in some strands of rusty barbed wire in the cage to see if it was interested in nesting yet. One day, the phoenix began turning the straw. Mr. Poldero signed a contract for the film rights. It's going to make a movie about this. At last, the hour seemed ripe. It was a fine Saturday evening in May. For some weeks, the public interest in the aging phoenix had been working up. And the admission charge had risen to 5 shillings. The enclosure was thronged, the lights and cameras were trained on the cage, and a loudspeaker proclaimed to the audience the rarity of what was about to take place. The phoenix, the loudspeaker said, is the aristocrat of bird life. Only the rarest and most expensive specimens of oriental wood, drenched in exotic perfumes, will tempt him to construct his strange love nest. Now a neat assortment of twigs and shavings, strongly scented, was shoved into the cage. The phoenix, the loudspeaker continued, is as capricious as Cleopatra, as luxurious as La Dewberry, as heady as a strain of wild gypsy music, all the fantastic pomp and passion of the ancient East, its languorous magic, its subtle cruelties. "Lux!" cried the woman in the crowd. "He's at it!" A quiver stirred the dulled plumage. The phoenix turned its head from side to side, descended, staggering from its perch, then wearily it began to pull about the twigs and shavings. The cameras clicked, the lights blazed full in the cage. Rushing to the loudspeaker, Mr. Poldero exclaimed, "Ladies and gentlemen, this is the thrilling moment the world has breathlessly awaited. The legend of centuries is materialized before our modern eyes. The phoenix!" The phoenix settled in its pyre and appeared to fall asleep. The film director said, "Well, if it doesn't evaluate more than this, mark it as instructional." At that moment, the phoenix and the pyre burst into flames. The flames steamed upward, leaped out on every side. In a minute or two, everything was burned to ashes, and some 1,000 people, including Mr. Poldero, perished in the blaze. You get it? You realize what just happened? This guy had spent all this money on this fantastic bird because it was so rare and so special, and they had heard that if it died, it was going to bust up in flames and then a new one would come. So he was trying to make all this money from it, trying to get all this publicity, make a movie out of it, and then the bird ended up killing all of them. Is that a crazy story? You see any like parallels there? I'm just like, I don't know, it made me think about like the greed factor of it. Like he was not really into it. Like the original Lord Strawberry was into it for like caring for the birds. And this guy just wanted to like make money off of it, and then it ended up coming to be his ruin. So let's think about some like themes there, and I don't know, I just thought it's a pretty powerful story. So we'll wrap up with some riddles and one more whodunit. So let's see what we got. Okay, riddles, riddles, riddles. What does the dentist say when you knock on his door? You're like, go to the dentist. You have a guess? Anything? Come on in. Come on in. Good pun for you there. That's a good one. Oh, here's the one that goes with our story. How about that? Can you make a fire with one stick? Can you make a fire with one stick? Just one stick. Can it turn to a fire? Yes, you can, if it's a match. Good fire riddle for you. Okay, so I have a whodunit story for today. Oh my gosh, look at that screen. That's terrible. This one is called Threat. Okay, so follow along, see if you can figure out, solve this crime. It was not the first time Dr. J.L. Quicksolve again, had received a threatening letter. This one, though, had seemed a little more menacing than the usual prank. It contained a small piece of plastic that was a bit of casing from the cylinder of dynamite. Dr. Quicksolve had taken steps to protect himself, but left his VW Beetle parked on the street as a temptation for a would-be bomber. He set up a video camera in his upstairs window to watch the car through the night and keep a tape record. Others were watching too. Sergeant Rebecca Shershot drove the unmarked police car throughout the neighborhood. Officer Longarm sat behind her. They were going to drive by Dr. Quicksolve's house just to see if anything looked suspicious. They knew about the threat and were worried about their friend. As they drove closer to the house, they saw a large sedan about half a block behind Dr. Quicksolve's VW. The car was dark. They did not realize it was occupied by two men until they were beside it. A small flame of a lighter flickered up to a cigarette on the passenger's side. Let's check this out, Sergeant Shershot said, pulling up to the front of the parked car. He approached the driver's door. Officer Longarm went around to the other side. The driver's window came down. The smiling, mustached driver spoke. "Hi, we're lost and we stopped to look at our map," he said, holding up the map to prove his point. "Could you help us out?" Sergeant Shershot was not smiling when she said, "Please get out of your car slowly with your hands up." The two men looked at the officers and their drawn guns and did as they were told. So what kind of evidence did these officers figure out that made those people come so willingly with them? What did they do? What hints did they have? They were sitting in a dark car, half a block behind the detective's car. They lit a cigarette. They had a map. What could have happened where they were tipped off, where they knew that those people were not just lost and needing to look at their map? If you have a guess, put it in the comments. So, are you ready? Are you ready for me to tell you what the answer is? Okay. Threatening letter. They were pretty sure he was going to bomb his car outside of his house. Okay. So the solution is the driver said they were looking at a map, yet he had not turned on the interior light to read it. So if they said they were looking at the map, they were already in a dark car. The only light they could see was the lit cigarette. So They couldn't have been looking at the map in the dark. That's the way they got tipped off. So, okay, there you go. There's the story for today. All right, have a good day, guys. See you later. Hopefully, we'll see you again soon.